Freddie Mercury is one of the most iconic figures in music history and an unforgettable member of the legendary band Queen, but the story of how he joined is rarely told truthfully. Let's explore how Freddie Mercury joined Queen. Before Queen, there was a band called Smile that consisted of Brian May, Roger Taylor, and Tim Staffell. They were an integral part of London's rock scene in the late 60s, but after 2 years together, Staffell left the group. Before this even happened, however, it's very rarely known that Tim Staffell and Brian May formed a group called 1984 when they were teenagers, which fell apart after high school. Believe it or not, Tim Staffell and Brian May stuck together even after this band broke up, which is what led to them eventually adding Roger Taylor to their group and forming Smile. All of this, of course, seems to indicate that the two were friends and got along fairly well. Fast forward to 1970, and Staffell left Smile, leaving May and Taylor to search for someone new. This was, of course, fairly shocking to many on the outside who didn't know the true story. But what exactly happened that caused him to leave? When the movie Bohemian Rhapsody came out, the story of how Freddie Mercury joined Queen seemed to finally have been answered. The story, of course, included the story of how Staffell left Smile and seemed to paint their parting in a negative light. The story from the movie starts with Smile playing at a club in London when Mercury stumbles upon their show. He watches the show, watches a heated argument between the band members, and sees Tim Staffell quit and storm off. After this, of course, Mercury sees his chance. He walks up to the remaining members and introduces himself, then proceeds to sing an a cappella version of their song "Doin' All Right." After that, he's in the band. This, however, isn't how it happened at all. One of the biggest lies that Bohemian Rhapsody told is that there was some sort of animosity between the remaining members of Smile and Tim Staffell. From what the movie would have you believe, it was Staffell's sudden departure that made room for Mercury to join, and Staffell left because he fought with the other members of the group. This couldn't be farther from the truth, however. Tim Staffell's departure was entirely amicable, and he even said that there was no animosity when asked about it. He simply began to want to play the music that was more improvisational and drifted towards listening to jazz and blues. He loved being part of the band, but felt it was the right time for him to move on. He even said that Freddie joining the band was a very natural process. Why? Well, that's another thing the movie got wrong. Unlike what the movie says, Freddie Mercury and Tim Staffell were good friends from college. They were in the same year at art school at Ealing College of Art and even took the same course. This is what gave Freddie a chance to join Queen. Freddie even used to play an air guitar with a meter-long steel ruler in the classroom, something that Tim Staffell has noted on multiple occasions. Although the movie paints it as Freddie's first time meeting the band, in reality, he had been friends with the other members for quite some time. Believe it or not, Staffell, Mercury, and May were all connected through the tight-knit London music scene. The music scene in London at that time was extremely close-knit, and almost everyone was a musician in some capacity. So when Tim left Smile, it's not like any of the band members were unaware of Freddie. In reality, Freddie Mercury had been a fan of Smile since the beginning. He socialized with the group and even attended some of their shows. They even hung out together sometimes, all of which the movie failed to mention. Another inaccuracy in the movie wasn't about the formation of the band and Freddie Mercury. The change that took place here was a change to the story of John Deacon and how he joined the band. Even though the movie seems to indicate that John Deacon was the original bassist for Queen, this isn't true at all. John Deacon was actually the fourth bass player that the band had tried out before he joined, and he didn't even begin playing with Queen until 1971, a full year after the band had formed. While the movie does show them playing Keep Yourself Alive, something that would be accurate, it makes the mistake of ignoring the story of how John Deacon joined Queen. Believe it or not, John Deacon's first impression of Queen wasn't a good one. Since he was a child, Deacon had been fiddling with electronics and all other sorts of machines, so he already had an idea of how a rock band was supposed to sound. Add to this the fact that at the age of 14, he had already formed his band, and you have someone who was used to being in charge. So when Deacon finally heard Queen, he was less than impressed. With all the band members dressed in black and playing in a shadowy room, Deacon found their music unimpressive and forgot about the band entirely. Fast forward a few months though, and he ran into Queen members Brian May and Roger Taylor while they were in the market for yet another bassist. They asked him to come along and audition, and Deacon reluctantly agreed. As for Deacon's music style, Queen loved it. They connected with his reserved stance and personality and finally felt like the band had its bass player. But what did Deacon think about the movie? He read and approved of the script, although he didn't take part in the film itself. The major reason for this, many believe, is that he has grown increasingly reclusive in recent years. This is in stark contrast to Tim Staffell, who seems to only involve himself in more projects with each passing year. Believe it or not, Staffell remained connected with the other members of Queen long after he departed from the group. Even in 2018, he recorded the vocals for their song "Doin' All Right," which appears in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. He knows that he was never really a frontman, an entertainer like Freddie, but he has remained in the music industry ever since. He's released 2 albums and is currently working on his 3rd. Staffell's connection to Queen has been ongoing, and he is still friends with the members of the band to this day. All of this, of course, seems to vary greatly from the romanticized version of how Freddie Mercury joined Queen as seen in Bohemian Rhapsody. However, it is the truthful version of how one of the most beloved singers in music history joined an iconic band. The real question, though, is what Staffell thinks of the movie. Does he dislike the movie for changing his story? It turns out that Tim Staffell has no problem with the movie Bohemian Rhapsody. He has nothing but praise for it, and even said you could not have expected a better film in an interview. He was delighted by how well the movie managed to condense 15 years into 2 hours, and said that he thought it was the right way to tell the story. This is a good thing to remember. Even though the real story behind Mercury joining Queen is arguably more interesting, the movie managed to do a great job of capturing what made him and the band so special. So while the movie didn't tell the full story, it still captured the emotion and energy that all these men had. Freddie Mercury joining Queen is an iconic story, but it's often misrepresented and told incorrectly. Bohemian Rhapsody captures the emotion, but not all of the details. The truth is, Mercury and Staffell were friends before Queen, and his amicable departure made room for Freddie to join the band. Whether you like the movie or not, it's important to know this unique and fascinating tale that showcases what a talented performer Mercury was and his close relationship with many of London's musicians. This story affirms Mercury's place as one of the greatest performers in music history, as well as a close friend to many of the other musicians at that time. Another fantastic thing about this story is the light it shows Freddie Mercury in. He wasn't some stuck-up rock star, but rather a down-to-earth music lover who had the massive talent and personality to be one of the biggest stars in history. And that's it for this video, though. Do you think Staffell should have been happy to be portrayed in the movie? Or do you think the story could have been told better? Let us know.